Have your fantasy teams been struggling this year? Or perhaps you've been doing pretty well but want to put yourself over the top? Then make sure to visit our friends over at Finish First Fantasy Advisors. They are the premier one-on-one consulting firm that specializes in providing you with expert support to help guide you to the championship. You will be matched with one of their expert advisors to provide you with the season-long insight for your redraft, dynasty, or DFS formats. Their advisors will contact you weekly to answer all of your questions and provide you the needed information to get to the next level. Set up a free 15-minute consultation by emailing them at info@finishfirstfantasy.com or by visiting them at www.finishfirstfantasy.com. That's www.finishfirstfantasy.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of the SkullKing Sports Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Goddard. I'm your host. And tonight is our weekly Waiver-Wire Madness special. We will be going over some of my favorite waiver-wire picks. I've changed up the way I'm doing this a little bit tonight. Instead of listing 3 to 4 guys that you might want to get, I am actually going to list the few players. So I think I've got 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 1 or 2 wide receivers, and 1 tight end. That's it. I am only listing the guys that I would actually want to go after. I'm not just going to list guys that, this guy could work out, this guy could work out. These are the only guys that I would be targeting, period. So that's the way I'm doing this tonight. It'll save a little time. Won't be quite as long. But it'll allow me to dive a little deeper into why I like these guys. So, with that, why don't we go ahead and get started with the day's headlines?
Today's headlines.
All right, and today's headlines are brought to you by the Sleeper app, one of the best apps you are going to find for fantasy football alerts and for creating your own dynasty leagues. Honestly, again, with the settings that they have, you're not going to find too many platforms that help you create dynasty leagues like the Sleeper app does. Plus, they have groups and channels that you can ask questions in and be involved that way. But again, for me, the biggest part of it is the fantasy football alert. So make sure to check them out at sleeper.app. online. You can also get the app on your phone. I believe they have it for both Android and Apple. All right. Story number 1, we're going to look at the second Monday Night Football game tonight and the struggles that Dallas had on offense. I should have had this game already pulled up on my computer, but This was an ugly game. It actually got to the point where it got to 28-3, and the Atlanta Falcons Twitter actually tweeted out, "You don't need to add us. You don't need to at us. We already know." But this game was just ugly, and there. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be a little bit apologetic about this towards the Dallas Cowboys. And there's a reason behind it. We talked about Andy Dalton being a solid quarterback to fill in because he's never had these types of weapons to work with. And with that, he usually, when he struggled a lot in Cincinnati, it usually had to do with the fact that he didn't have much of an offensive line. And one of the things that I was worried about with Dak and with Ezekiel Elliott at the beginning of this year was the fact that they had I think it was their starting center retired. They had 1 or 2 guys that were dealing with injury. And so over the course of since last year, they had lost at least 3, if not 4, of their starting linemen. I think, was it Zach Taylor or whatever his name is? Zach Martin. There it is. Was the only returning offensive linemen to start tonight from last year and from the year in so over the last couple of years. So they're struggling because they don't have. I mean, all those all pros are gone. And then I think it was in the second quarter, Zach Martin goes out with a concussion. It may have even been in the third quarter, but I think it was in the second quarter. So then you have 5 offensive linemen that weren't starting last year, all playing. Now, I get it. You know, they're professionals. They're supposed to be able to fill in and do their job. But we're talking about 5 guys who weren't starting last year, who have not worked together like this before in a game, you know, against a, let's see if I can pull it up, against a defense that has been playing pretty solidly this year. Let me actually pull it up. Team defense stats. Arizona, overall, I think they're about 12th, between 12 and 15 in terms of total yards given up on the season, or at least in terms of yards per game. They have been pretty stingy against the pass, only giving up 222 yards in the passing game. So they've been tough in the pass game. They tend to give up. It looks like. I mean, I know that they tend to give up a little bit more in the run game. Looking at their points given up per game in terms of fantasy points. They're, I want to say, giving up around the 10th to 12th most going into tonight. That being said, I thought that tonight was going to possibly be a good night for Ezekiel Elliott, and that proved to not be the case. The offense just couldn't get going. Ezekiel Elliott lost 2 fumbles in this game. He's never lost more than 2 fumbles in a season before, and he lost 2 in this game. There were many dropped passes, at least 1 that I saw in the end zone, if not 2 in the end zone through wide receivers' hands. And then, you know, they're not even trying to get Ezekiel Elliott going. You know, Andy Dalton, I understand that they were down, 4 touchdowns. But they didn't even try to get Ezekiel Elliott, trying to find some run lanes, trying to get some cohesion on that offensive line. And so this was just, you cannot put this game on Andy Dalton. I'm sorry. You look at the 2 interceptions that Andy Dalton threw. One of them was a bad interception. The other one was a non-call pass interference. You can't do anything about that. I mean, even the announcers were talking about how that should have been a pass interference. At minimum, should have been defensive holding. They even went to the rules guy, and even he said, yeah, that should have been at minimum defensive holding. So I'm not going to put this all on Dalton. They win against a tough pass defense. You got Kyler Murray coming home, who used to play in Texas. Yes, I get it that Andy Dalton, lives in the Texas area, lives in the Dallas area, went to TCU. I get it. This was I think more emotional for Kyler Murray. And let's be honest, that Dallas defense is awful. And when your defense can't get off the field, it's going to make it for a hard time for your offense to even get in any rhythm. So, all right, I'm done pontificating about this. Just for those of you who want to automatically say, well, obviously, it was Dak, or now it's Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton sucks. No, this offensive line is shredded, guys. They're horrible. And they don't have a defense that can stop anyone to give the offense a chance to even think about catching up. So there I've said it. So moving on, next story. Raheem Mostert looks like he is likely to go to IR with a high ankle sprain. So we're looking again at the team of Jerick McKinnon and Jeff Wilson most likely being the guys in the San Francisco offense for running back. Story number 3, Taylor Lewan is going to IR with a torn ACL. We will see how this affects both the passing game and the run game. Now, obviously, I'm pretty sure Lewan went out before Derrick Henry had his big 94-yard run. Before they went, charged right down and got the game-winning touchdown in overtime. I get that. It'll just be interesting to see, because Taylor Lewan has been such an anchor for that offense, keeping Ryan Tannehill upright and helping to open up lanes for Derrick Henry. You're not going to just replace an all-pro left tackle like that. So we'll see how this kind of plays out, moving forward. But as long as their left tackle can do a serviceable job, I think that the Tennessee Titans, for the most part, keep rolling. So again, we'll just have to kind of watch this. Sticking with the Tennessee Titans, Corey Davis has been activated off the COVID reserve list. So now they have both their top wide receivers, along with Adam Humphries, who came off the COVID list as well and had a touchdown in the game yesterday. So looks like they're going to have, for the most part, their full slew of weapons this next week. Jonnu Smith is questionable for Week 7 with a sprained ankle. We will see kind of how that goes there. Mark Ingram may be available in Week 8 after the bye for Baltimore, depending on how his ankle is doing. If he doesn't, Gus Edwards has been the guy. Gus the Bus has been the guy in that offense who has been the most explosive in terms of the running back. So I like Gus to be the guy moving forward. We'll see what happens. Again, this is all dependent on if Mark Ingram comes back or not. So, but if he doesn't come back Week 8, I don't have in front of me who they actually play. Let me see. Pull that up. So in Week 8, the Baltimore Ravens will play. Bam. Week 8. The Baltimore Ravens will play the Steelers, which is a tough defense to play against. So we'll see how that plays out in Week 8. We'll see who all is healthy. If the Ravens do have Mark Ingram, I still don't like any of the running backs in terms of that, simply because the Steelers' defense has been so good against the run game so far this year. So Zach Ertz is expected to miss 3 to 4 weeks with an ankle injury. Miles Sanders is expected to miss Week 7, so it's probably going to be the Boston Scott, Corey Clement show in the running back room for Philadelphia in the Thursday night game. I believe it's them against the New York Giants. Christian McCaffrey, we're still waiting to see when he's going to be back. The head coach for Carolina said it could be likely not to be this next week. Could be the week after. It could be the week after that. They just don't know. So be expected to have to wait on Christian McCaffrey until Week 9, or maybe a little later. So, and I think that is all of the injury news we've got for you for tonight. So we are going to now move into our Waiver-Wire Madness. But before we do that, a little word about our main sponsor, Dr. Squatch Soaps. Guys, I know, and gals, we do have a few gals that actually listen to this podcast. I actually do know that from our statistics. But Dr. Squatch is a fantastic company. All their soaps are all naturally made, handmade soaps, cold pressed, made here in the USA, using all natural ingredients. I love their soap. Again, I'm a big fan of the black bar, the pine tar bar. Smells great. It smells like you just got out of a forest. Has that, for lack of a better term, a manly smell to it. I'm sure you've seen their advertisements on Facebook. Absolutely hilarious. Well, one of the things that we have from Dr. Squatch, we actually have a promo code that you can use. Go to drsquatch.com. Order $20 worth of product. And again, they have soap, they have shampoo, they have toothpaste, they have, I believe, shaving creams, colognes. Go to Dr. Squatch, order at least $20 worth of product, and at checkout, use the promo code SKS20, and you'll get 20% off all orders of $20 or more. Again, using the promo code SKS20 at checkout. So again, go to Dr. Squatch, check them out. I love their products. My wife loves their products. She loves how I smell when I come out of the shower. So again, go to drsquatch.com, check out their stuff. They've got a lot of great scents, a lot of great soaps. Check them out. And again, use the promo code SKS20 at checkout. All right, let's move on into the Waiver-Wire Madness.
Waiver-Wire Madness.
All right, we're going to start it off. Now, I've told you guys about this. I am part of the expert consensus for Fantasy Pros. And as part of that, they allow us to do fantasy waiver wire rankings. What they do, though, is as part of that, is they only take in the guys as part of that list. They pre-create that list of the guys that we can put in our rankings for waiver wire. As far as weekly rankings, we can do whatever we want. We can add as many players as we want to that. But in terms of waiver wire, they kind of pick and choose which guys are on there, and they have to be owned in a consensus of less than 50% of all leagues across Yahoo and ESPN combined. So on the list from them, in terms of quarterbacks available for waiver wire rankings, I don't like any of the options that are listed. The options that are listed for this next week: Derek Carr going against Tampa Bay, Kirk Cousins against Phillip Rivers. Kirk Cousins on a bye week and Phillip Rivers both on bye week. So Derek Carr is going up against Tampa Bay. I don't like Derek Carr for that game. Tampa Bay, their defense has been absolutely brutal. Right now, they are the number one defense in terms of average yards per game. They give up only 64 rush yards a game, only 217 pass yards per game. They are fifth in terms of giving up pass yards. So they have been a phenomenal defense. And so I don't like Derek Carr. I don't like any Raiders for this next game against Tampa Bay in the Sunday night game. So because of that, I went to Yahoo to see who was ranked where there. And so for me, the only guy that I like that's rostered in less than 50% of leagues, I believe he's in 38% of leagues on Yahoo. I'm checking just to make sure that I had that number right. I didn't actually write that number down. And so we go to that rostered percentage, and 45. So that's why he's probably not on the list, is because he's probably rostered more than that on Yahoo, on ESPN. But Teddy Bridgewater going against New Orleans. Again, if you have a quarterback on bye or something, I think that Teddy Bridgewater going against New Orleans is a very good streaming option. The New Orleans Saints are giving up the fourth most amount of fantasy points against quarterbacks. They're giving up the 15th most pass yards per game. And on average, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, the Harris Index. So go to harrisfootball.com. You'll find the Harris Index. I've had Harris on my show last year. And so one of the things that he does is he actually doesn't post his index until 5 weeks have been played. And then what he does is he takes the average amount of points plus or minus for each position that a defense gives up at each position, based on compared to what a player does on average. So according to the Harris Index, the New Orleans Saints give up 2 points more than projected to quarterbacks per week over the last 5 weeks. So for me, that gives me the thought that that's a plus matchup for Teddy Bridgewater. You also look at the wide receivers that he has. Now, New Orleans is especially vulnerable to tight ends, but with the wide receivers that they have, they still are giving up a bunch of pass yards. New Orleans is, again, 15th most pass yards per game. So I think that this is still a decent enough matchup for the for Teddy Bridgewater to take advantage, to be a streaming option for next week. So that's my one quarterback. Next, moving on to the running backs. Justin Jackson. I don't have, let me get his rostered percentage here. Rostered in 48.9% of leagues. Now, I have dropped Josh Kelly in a couple leagues just because he's not performing. Justin Jackson, I think, can be the better running back. He has more experience. Going up against Jacksonville, who gives up the 5th most amount of fantasy points to running backs. They give up the 5th most amount of rushing yards per game, and they give up 5 points over projection per week to running backs. So this is a plus matchup for Justin. I would prefer Justin Jackson to Josh Kelly in this matchup. So plus with the way that Herbert has been able to throw the ball over the yard, it may allow them to run the ball more. So I like Justin Jackson as my favorite running back for this next week. If you need a little depth. The other running back I'm looking at is J.D. McKissick versus Dallas. Now, Dallas has been somewhat tough against running backs. They give up the 19th most fantasy points. So there actually was the 13th or 14th least amount of fantasy points per game to running backs. However, J.D. McKissick is also getting 19 receptions over the last 3 games. Looking at his targets, he has 8, 60. So he's got 22. Make sure I do my math right in my head. 22 targets over the last 3 games, basically since Kyle Allen took over. And so he is definitely getting used in the offense in the pass game. Has 129 receiving yards. Has not gotten a whole lot in the rush game. This last game against the Giants, 8 for 41, but mostly what he's being used is in the pass game. So this is more of a PPR 12 to 14 team league type of move. Justin Jackson's the guy I like better. Again, we're looking more like 12 to 15, 12 to 14 team leagues. And so that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of those guys. But again, J.D. McKissick, again, being used, it's full point PPR, 12 plus team leagues. I think J.D. McKissick is a decent pickup for this next week. Moving on to the wide receivers. Starting it off with Travis Fulgam. I don't know how he is not rostered in more leagues than this, to be completely honest. After what he did last week, I thought there was going to be more of a push to go after him, but there hasn't been. He plays the Thursday night game, 38.3% rostered. Now, I understand a lot of his production came in garbage time this last week. However, we now look at Dallas Goddard still hasn't come off IR. Zach Ertz is now injured. There's still no Alshon Jeffrey, still no Deshaun Jackson. It's Travis Fulgam and who's it? Greg Ward. That's it. That's all they've got. And J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who the only contribution he can ever have is falling on top of fumbled balls in the end zone. So Travis Fulgam, look at what he's got this coming week. He's going up against the New York Giants team that's given up the 11th most fantasy points per week to the wide receiver. They give up the 17th most pass yards, so kind of middle of the road pass yards, but they give up a lot of touchdowns. Now, while this isn't great here, over the last 5 weeks, they've given up 2.3 points per week under projection to wide receivers. However, Travis Fulgam is now the only wide receiver. Him and Greg Ward are the main 2 wide receivers. That's it. Plus, they've lost Miles Sanders. So we're down to Boston Scott and Corey Clement in the backfield. You probably still won't have Dallas Goddard, and you won't have Zach Ertz. They don't have a choice but to throw to Travis Fulgham. So he's had 23 targets over the last 2 games with 16 receptions. He has scored a touchdown in 3 consecutive games. Now, again, you got to be careful about chasing points. This is all opportunity. He is the only guy there. So, the next wide receiver that I have, again, looking at guys that I actually want. I know Mike Williams is listed as probably my number 3 wide receiver on my waiver wire rankings. However, Mike Williams' value drops drastically the moment Keenan Allen steps back on the field. And so we don't know if Keenan Allen's going to be playing this next week, dealing with the back injury from last week. But if he's back, then you don't know what to do with Mike Williams. Now, the guy that I like is Tim Patrick. I actually have him above Mike Williams, my number 2 wide receiver to pick up this week. Again, tough matchup against Kansas City. 3rd least amount of fantasy points to wide receiver, 11th least amount of pass yards. 1.8 points per week to wide receivers under projection. The thing about Tim Patrick is, again, this is a matter of opportunity. And the Denver defense, looking at what they've done pretty good against running backs, but they give up more than average against quarterbacks and against wide receivers, which means that the Kansas City offense could get out to a lead and force Denver to have to throw. Because of that, I think that Tim Patrick could be in, again, for an okay game. He's had over 100 yards last 2 games, 8 targets in each last 2 games, I believe. I believe he's at 16 targets over the last 2 games, 10 catches. So, again, more opportunity. I think that this provides a chance for Tim Patrick, again, to possibly get into the end zone, to put up some more yards. Again, this is a 12 to 16 team league. Flex play is where I would have Tim Patrick. Or if you're riddled with injuries and you have no other options, again, Tim Patrick I think has enough opportunity and enough volume to at least not give you a 0 unless he gets injured, which that's random. You can't deal much with that anyway. So my last addition at tight end, the only guy that I believe is really worth picking up at tight end on the waiver wire this week is Dallas Goddard. And the reason for that is because of the fact you've got Zach Ertz, who's already on the decline. Dallas Goddard was getting more targets per game when they were both healthy and on the field. And once Dallas Goddard comes back, he is going to be the main guy that Carson Wentz trusts to throw the ball to, because he has the most rapport with him. So once Dallas Goddard comes back, he's going to get peppered with targets. So if you have the space to stash him, do it. If you can make the space to stash him, do it. And you need help with tight end, he could set you up for a huge rest of the season in terms of tight end production. Moving on. So, all right, that is it. That is all I've got for you. So tomorrow, I believe what I'm going to be going over is some sleepers and busts that I'm seeing for the week 7 matchups. I hope you guys have all had a decent week, that you got the players that you got the wins that you were hoping for. I really needed that touchdown from Clyde Edwards-Helaire that was called back from a holding penalty. I lost by one less than 1.5 points because partially because I didn't start Ryan Tannehill over Cam Newton, but the other reason is I needed 1.5 more points. I needed 15 more yards from Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or for him to just get in the end zone. So, but he doesn't get in the end zone in the pros. So, all right, that's it from me. Again, my name is Ryan Sculler. This has been the SkullKing Sports Fantasy Football Podcast. Hope you guys all have a good rest of your week. Hope to see you or hear you or whatever. Hope you check in with tomorrow night's episode, and we'll talk to you later. Hey, SkullKing Nation. Thank you for listening to the SkullKing Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.